All right, good afternoon, everyone. How are we doing in the room? Everyone holding on in there before the food and drinks coming up shortly after the panel discussion. Just as a quick pulse check, how is everyone enjoying the afternoon? Shout out some words there to describe the feeling that you felt today. Inspired, love it. Hungry. Me too. All right, just before the panel discussion, we were just commenting on how energizing and how inspiring it is to have a room absolutely filled with budding entrepreneurs and people that are going through the journey. My name is Sarah, by the way. I'm an investor with Antler, so part of the Antler team. You'll see us scattered all across the room. But this is probably one of the proudest things that I've been involved in at Antler. It's probably the largest women founder event that we have ever hosted globally. And as Jed mentioned at the very beginning, we have quite a significant global footprint. So we're in 27 locations all across the world. So I think that deserves a round of applause. Thank you for joining. So I think before we jump into the panel discussion, just wanted to reflect that we've heard from some incredible speakers. Jed really set the scene by talking about the data and the demographics that's driving European founders, and then kind of honing in on UK insights. Susan Lin spoke to us about, building a VC backable business and what that actually entails. Nicole spoke to us about product market fit, and then Dimple, absolutely incredible speech on go-to-market and building out your sales strategy. So I think turning to the panel, wanted to, I guess over the next 45 minutes or hour, really, build on what we've learned throughout the afternoon. We're going to hear from 4 brilliant and top founders that are all in the early stages of building right now. So I think varying degrees of stages, different sectors. So I guess the panel discussion will really kind of hone into their experience, how they got started, challenges, any best practices, and really any tips and tricks to guide people in the room on their journey themselves. So I guess let me introduce you to our panel. We've got Jazz to my left, who's the co-founder at Luna. We have Lauren, who's the founder at Chairback. We have Mary, who is the founder and co-CEO at Odin. And we have Alexia, who is the co-founder of YourJuno. So give it up for the panelists. All right, so just to kick us off, let's start, Jazz, with you. If you could give a little bit of the audience, a little bit of background on who you are, what you're building, and then we can hand it over to Lauren.
Perfect. So, I'm Jazz Schembri Stothart, co-founder of Luna, and I have built Luna with my best friend Joe, but also someone I met on my MBA program at Oxford, which is actually where the idea for Luna came from. And Luna is the world's first digital health and wellbeing companion for tweens and teens. So think of it like a big sister in your pocket. All of those potentially awkward, maybe taboo questions we as women in this room might have had when we were younger, and maybe felt we didn't want to talk to our teachers, our parents, nurses. We're there to fill that gap. Because you would have thought somebody by now would have thought about that, but they haven't. So Luna's here to help to do that.
Awesome.
Woot woot. Hi there, I'm Lauren Ladd, and I founded Shareback, which is an AI native workplace platform. This is a recent pivot about 6 months ago, so maybe we'll get into pivots. I'm American, and before starting Shareback, I was a product manager at BCG Digital Ventures, and then prior to that, I was an intelligence officer with the US military, so also a very different background.
I'm Mary, one of the co-founders of Odin. We are, this is going to sound way too cringe and cheesy, but we're on a mission to let more people vote with their money on what the future looks like in terms of what the actual product is. We are making it easier for anyone, anywhere to set up an angel syndicate or a VC fund because we think it's very important for the people allocating capital to look more like us. what that actually means is we handle the plumbing, like setting up legal structures, handling the payments that allow people to invest in private companies. If there are founders in here, which I'm assuming there are, founders also use us to roll up their angels into one legal entity, one line on the cap table.
And I was her early adopter.
Yeah.
First year in business.
Hello, everyone. I am Alexia, and I'm the co-founder of a platform called Your Juno, which is an online money school for women and non-binary people. So my life's mission is to get more money into women's hands and make women richer. We've launched the app, I think, about 3 years ago, and we've helped 150,000 women in the UK make more money. On average, more or less from our calculations, we've had £500 million more going into women's hands since launching Juno, thanks to the education that we provide. So that's the size of the gender investment gap, so it's massive. Before that, I was at PwC and McKinsey, but only for a year and a half, because I started Juno when I was 23 with my sister, who was 22. And we've gone through a couple of rounds of funding, so happy to speak about that as well.
Fantastic. What is so funny? All right. So I guess thank you very much, guys, for kind of providing a little bit of background to your journey. So I think thinking about the period before you even started, curious to kind of hear from you guys, how did you build confidence and readiness to actually go and start it? Anyone want to take that?
Okay, I'm happy to go. So I think I mentioned before I did my MBA. So prior to the MBA, I was a consultant at Deloitte, and then I freelanced for myself for 2 years. And I think it was really there that I realised actually like I can do this entrepreneurial journey, and I was winning clients so I could pay for business school because it's expensive. And yeah, as I mentioned, we got this idea for Luna as part of the MBA. We pitched it to our professors, real investors, this hypothetical idea of this digital companion for teens. And they turned around and said, oh, yeah, this is a really good idea. He's doing it after the masters. And at the time, I was like, not me. I'm going to go get my 6-figure salary. This is going to be great. And lo and behold, we graduated. And I was like, actually, no, maybe there is something in this. But to answer your point around confidence and what made us really take that next step, for us, it was talking to our users. So we had this idea at business school. I'm a millennial, I'm not a Gen Alpha. In my head, this was cool. But we went back to our old schools, me and my co-founder, and we just spoke to the teenagers to really understand, like, is there a problem? Would you really use something like this? What are you using today? And when they turned around and said, well, we're actually using TikTok, and can we come and do work experience with you? Can we download it? I was like, okay, wow, there really is like a need for a product like this. So for me, that confidence piece came from speaking to the users and actually just hypothetically thinking about the FOMO I would have when somebody else would come and do this and make tons of money from it. So yeah, speaking to the users, and also a great opportunity to do this with my business partner as well. So that's a bit about me.
Fantastic. Anyone else want to share? I guess the building the confidence and readiness to start a business.
I have a ridiculous story.
Let's hear it.
I definitely come more from the side of maybe being overconfident and needing to tone that back a bit. So when we were actually raising one of the rounds, and one of the VCs obviously said, hey, we don't think this is like $1 billion opportunity. And I kind of signed off with my email explaining I hadn't done a financial model at this point. So it was like, I'm not trying to necessarily just build a $1 billion business. If that was one of the metrics that I cared about, this would be closer to $1 trillion business, actually. And then obviously at some point, me and my co-founder did kind of go through, like, how do we actually get there? And I was like, it's pretty hard, isn't it? Yeah, they didn't invest in us.
I think mine was the opposite. I took about 3 years to launch Shareback. I used to read Strictly VC, if you guys know this newsletter, every morning. And my original idea that I fundraised with, up until 6 months ago when I pivoted, was a client-facing project management tool. And I was at a consultancy, BCG, and about 20% of our time was making a deliverable to show to the client what we were doing. I mean, it was just ridiculous. And I thought, surely Atlassian or one of these companies is going to realize that the tools we use to do the work, like Jira, are not the tools we use to showcase that work to clients or to our boss or to our teams. And I just thought it would happen. And literally 3 years went by and I just thought, this is enough. Maybe this is a good enough idea and I can do it. But there were about 1 million things that I didn't want anyone to ask me about. I couldn't describe the difference between front end and back end. I couldn't explain to you how shares work or what an option pool is. And I just was too fearful of all the things that I didn't know. And I actually took a sabbatical from work for about 4 to 6 weeks, I think it was. And I made a list of everything I hoped no one would ever ask me. And I just YouTubed straight until I felt more confident talking about stuff. So yeah, did not talk about $1 trillion ideas. Actually, I was like really nervous, but did so much prep before I left work that when I did actually leave, VCs were like, holy shit, you're so far along. Because I just was so insecure about going out with nothing. So yeah, a bit different.
No, I love the contrasting views. What about you, Alexia?
So I really interpreted the question more as how did you build confidence in yourself, essentially, to start a company? And for me, it was really, the answer I was going to give is, oftentimes when I've been asked about imposter syndrome, which is a question that women get all the time, my thinking is I don't have any. I definitely am smart enough to be in this room, and I don't actually feel like I lack the confidence. I have the confidence to do this, but I need to make myself more likable. I need to make myself smaller, because for some reason a woman that's confident is a bitch. And so I was always like, oh yeah, you know, I didn't really know what I was doing, but I guess I was super passionate, and so I solved lots of problems. But now that I'm thinking about it, it's actually not helpful to promote this type of narrative at all. So yes, I think I am confident, and I have been for a long time. And for me, confidence is a muscle that you train. It's a muscle that you build. It's not looking into the mirror and saying an affirmation of, I am going to be a boss. That's not going to help. I think it's looking back at all of the challenges that you've overcome and putting yourself in situations that are super challenging time and time again, and then just looking at sort of past performance as an indication that in the future you have lots of potential. And so throughout my entire career, kind of subconsciously, I've noticed that I've put myself in all of these very out there situations, whether that's moving around all the time or working for free in startups, being in a male-dominated industry, even things like doing like a skydiving course so that I could learn how to jump on my own. Lots of these little things that eventually built up to me thinking, yeah, I can do stuff. And so confidence for me is more of a muscle. And today I can say, even if it makes me less likable, that yeah, I feel very confident.
Love that. All right, so I guess moving on to a slightly different topic on actually getting started right. One of the key things for a lot of people is finding the right person to build a business with. And I think probably many in the room are looking and searching for the right co-founder. So would love to explore that with each of you and figure out, did you have someone in mind when you started the business? If not, how did you find them? If yes, where did they come from? And then a little bit on the dynamics as well for how that started.
I feel like I started last time, so someone else can.
I mean, I met my co-founder by accident through a friend at her birthday party, and yeah, everyone was very not in a normal state of mind. We ended up actually, and we ended up hanging out because one of my friends had been like, let's go to an after party, and trying to get him to volunteer his flat, even though he wanted to go to sleep early, me too, and I was supposed to be staying with her. And she was like, yeah, I live in Old Street. I was like, yeah, okay, cool, let's go, let's head to Paddy's house. And we get there, and me and Paddy are just drinking tea while the rest of them are like, you know, and we got into an argument on the way there. But this is not relevant for the question. But this is how we met, not at a networking event. And sometimes, well, I think I got really lucky there. I'm like, shall I just finish the story now? But we ended up getting into an argument about something, but me and Paddy were on the same side, and it was kind of like a heated debate. And when we met, it was kind of like the gut instinct of, oh, this is who I have been looking for the whole time. You know, it's been 10 years since I tried starting something alone and testing some co-founder dynamics on EF ages ago. But but that trust was there, and suddenly it was like, oh my God, I've met the perfect person with complementary skills, shared values, what we want to achieve. If I hadn't met him, the thing that I have heard from a lot of founders who have co-founders is after they've done that, they're like, I'm never working with a co-founder again. And I think it's super important to also see, there's pros and cons, right? Me and Paddy's relationship is great, but it's also not perfect. We have to work on that all the time as well. But it's better to be alone than to probably have the wrong co-founder.
I've got a very different story to yours. My co-founder is my sister, so we didn't meet at an after party, we met at birth. And I think what that has led to is to the fact that we couldn't let the co-founder relationship tarnish our sister relationship. Like, our sister relationship was the most important thing, and so there was no room for us to get to a place where we would hate each other. And so we've been very intentional throughout the last 4 years about building a co-founder relationship that works. And I think looking back at it, this has really been a blessing. So we've done founder coaching, we've done sort of couples therapy as sisters before there was anything wrong, because we were just like, we cannot afford to hate each other by the end of this. And I think the things that I've learned from it have been just how often arguments are just from a complete misunderstanding of the other person's perspective. And we now, every single week, have our rituals. So we start our morning with a sharing circle where we say for 5 minutes how we feel about the day, what we're stressed about, what's coming ahead. We do the same when we close the day. We have sort of weekly roundups where it's just the two of us when we talk about work, and then we decide to move into a non-work state, so then we only talk about stuff that's going on in our private life. But what I'm trying to share with this is we have been so careful and so intentional because we just couldn't afford to let it slip. And I think that's something that every co-founder, couple, or trio can take on board as well, is this relationship is maybe more important than your marriage even. So don't let it fail.
Agreed on that. By the way, me and Paddy got a coach really early on as well, and it made such a big difference. And I think sometimes you can feel like, oh, well, I've only raised a pre-seed round, surely I shouldn't be spending this much money on coaching, but it's by far, it's such a good use of money.
Should I go? I was at BCG, and luckily I was working with a lot of engineers, and I went around to about 5 different engineers trying to convince them to work with me on building this. Finally, one said yes, and we built an MVP. We applied to Y Combinator. From the time you apply to the time that you get an interview is about 4 months. And during that time, we realized that we were not going to be good partners. But we said, he'll keep the product up and I'll find someone new. And then when we found out that we did get an interview, he wrote me, I'm really sorry, but I would just be devastated if you got into Y Combinator with my work. I'm going to delete the software. No, this is a true story, guys. This is nuts. He deleted everything. He deleted, at the time, we were using InVision, RIP. He deleted all of our code, everything. It's crazy. And so I went to the interview with nothing. And I had asked other engineers, I screenshotted his message, can anyone help me? And luckily, a friend of a friend sent it to a guy who read this and said, this is very bad engineering behavior. I'm going to rebuild your site by the time you have your interview. And that's my co-founder today. Oh. Yeah. Crazy, guys.
Sorry, I've just shed a tear there.
But yeah, that's how I met him.
Wow, I wasn't expecting that story.
Yeah, and just to tell you, Yev and I ended up applying to Y Combinator together the next round, and we got in. Oh. So things can work out.
Gosh, what a story to follow up with.
I know, right? All right, so I guess moving on, you have figured out that you want to go into entrepreneurship, you want to build the next big thing. You've found your co-founder, and now you're starting to build the company. I guess we'd love to get your thoughts on, how early did you actually hit the market, and what did that initial product look like, and how did you iterate, build, and evolve it from there. So we'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Someone else. You go, Jess.
Sure. So it took 1 year from us from incorporating and being like, let's do this, to actually officially launching on the app stores. The first 3 months was this school roadshow, so like I said, tweens and teens, speaking to loads of users, taking our very first idea, which was a platform where it'd be teens and parents on the same app, and it got shut down immediately. They were like, there's no way I'm going to use this if my mum or dad can see what I'm asking. So obviously, like, iterated on that. Colour scheme, we were like hot pink, purple, and they were like, babes, it's all about pastel. So like, we just had to keep iterating until finally these teens were like, this is good. So that was about 3 months. And then, no, this is like serious. Take it where they were brutal. And then in January, we were like, okay, we have confidence in our idea. We really want to raise some money. Neither Joan or I are technical, so we'd have to be raising to bring someone technical to the team. But in order to sort of prove to investors we could do this, we were like, let's just build the first version ourselves. And so Joe upskilled on how to use a no-code tool called Adalo, and basically built the bare bones of like, she'll hate me for saying this, but the ugliest app I've ever seen in my life. And I was like ringing up universities, like, please can we have some medical students, can we have some medics to help us film content? Everyone's like, no, we've never heard of you, why would we do this? I was like, I don't come from a family of doctors, so I had no medics to help me create content, which was my job. And then finally, through a small grant we'd won, one of the guys on this program was a doctor, and he was like, I'll put a tweet out for you. And suddenly we started to get all these young women who were like, we only get taught one module in our whole 6 years of medicine about women's health, like, I'll help you. So then my job was then run this content day. I had no idea what I was doing. I never used TikTok, by the way, anything. Anyway, long story short, stitched the world's worst app together. Got 100 of these teenagers on it. It looked terrible. They'd send in questions via an email. It was all stitched together like Google Sheets. Anyway, they were using it. They were logging in 5 times a week. They were watching our rubbish YouTube videos. And this was like, wow, if teens are using this terrible product, there's clearly like a need for this. So that's what springboarded our first raise, and then raised £600,000 first to hire a tech team. And then, so that was in May, and it took us about four to 5 months to launch on the app stores. And then in terms of iteration, like literally we are reviewing features, leaning into data, like literally every 2 weeks. So we work in 2-week sprints. So that's us. Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm like still thinking about the last question, because I'm like, that was not a useful story, but
How early did you hit the market?
But I do have maybe a useful thing. I think because it is very hard to find a good co-founder, and what me and Paddy actually did when we decided to work on something together, we had agreed that he would actually keep his full-time job and pay me a salary. It would just be a very low salary, and we did that for several months. And I moved back home. Him and his wife also moved back home, probably slightly less fun for them. But that was, a slightly different thing than maybe what some people think is an option. Yeah. Yep. Anyway, back to the actual question in terms of iterations. I always forget dates now, but I'd say I used to be a software engineer, which helped with kind of putting something out. One of the reasons I think our launch date was sped up a lot was partly because we were kind of building something, and then Paddy one day just messaged me and was like, by the way, I saw the thing, and we have to build this whole thing by this day, and it was in 2 weeks. And I was like, right, okay, like, gonna do it. And then this was a period during the beginning of COVID where I thought I was nocturnal, and I went to sleep at 9 a.m. every night. So I'd be like really tired right in bed, but I'm like, I'm just nocturnal. But that kind of helped us speed up the development for the first iteration. And then it was literally just having that customer, like everything they'd give feedback on, it was like, okay, just building this straight in, even just with that one customer.
Awesome.
I'm going to bounce back on that story because actually ours is quite similar. I was working, and my sister and I had read every startup book you can read, so we knew we need to go to market quickly, do this thing that is really shitty that no one's going to like, but at least we're out there. But I was still working in my consulting job, and so very similarly to you, I don't know why I thought, you're in this endless pit of energy and you can do 12 hours at work and then do this startup. And so then I ended up taking study drugs for like 3 months, trying to keep me up at night, which is not a great story, but I think worth sharing. And yeah, it was horrible. I mean, it was just, we were basically doing this building this online money school without the tech, because I'm non-technical and my sister is also non-technical. So we were just delivering it over email. But what we found is that as soon as we put it out there, I think in the first 2 weeks, we had about 1,000 women that had subscribed to it. And it was just people like passing it on. And I was just like, no one is talking about money. It's such a big taboo. There's definitely something to be done here. And then we raised our first round, telling investors that we had a prototype, which was a complete lie. And they, I want to share all of this because I feel the building is really chaotic and like the four of us are a good representation of this. And so then we had calls with them and they had put a call for the 26th of December. So we were already a bit shocked, like, okay, this is a day after Christmas. My birthday is also on the 25th. And we spent Christmas, the entire sort of 48 hours of Christmas time, building this prototype on Figma, never having used that platform before. I think it looked pretty good, to be honest, but I think if you saw it, I don't know if you would agree. And then we went to the investors, and yeah, from there we raised money and then got a team, etc. But just the beginnings are really hectic and messy, and I think that's a part of it as well.
Awesome. All right. So I guess going back to some of the insights that we saw from Nicole, she talked a lot about product market fit. So we'd love to hear from you. I guess how did you approach achieving product market fit? So what were the strategies that you guys used to achieve it or get closer to it?
Okay, so we were trying to build, as I said before, a client-facing project management tool, basically for other people to have visibility on what's going on a project, which is kind of crazy that even now there's not, unless you join someone's internal tooling of a project. Otherwise, it's usually weekly updates to whomever it is you're trying to keep in the loop. And as you already know, I did a lot of work before we actually started building this and getting it out. And I thought, perfect, I'll go to startups because they're the riskiest and they'll be willing to use this. And they have to update investors, let's say. They have to update their community. And it's not the exact use case, but this might actually go somewhere. Got some startups using it. And then I booked in to go back to my boss at BCG. And I was so excited. I was like, they're going to get it. They're going to love it. Like, this was born out of here. Great. Walk in. He was like, we do not care about startups. We work with Fortune 500 companies. Go get yourself some enterprises, and then we can talk. I mean, like, it was like a whatever. And I was like, fine. I was like, fine, I'll be back. And I actually said before I left, I said, book in for 1 month from now. And I just was on a mission, and I got Ocado and L'Oreal and Johnson & Johnson and really big names, purposefully the names that were clients, to use this with their teams. And then I went back to my boss or ex-boss, and that's when I really realized that if BCG wants this, other consultancies are going to want this too. And I had found my ICP at the time. So that's what made me feel like we had product market fit. And we did that for about a year until AI came and all market dynamics changed. And consultancies started pulling back. They cut their workforce a lot. Everything changed. And so we had to as well. So, yeah.
Anyone else want to share more?
Yeah. I like to build things for myself. I think sometimes, obviously, it's kind of like, this is fun, but no one's going to use this or pay for it. When we started out, we were building a community, partly also because I'd just moved back from Berlin and I was like, I want to make new friends, and COVID had hit. So I was reaching out to people on LinkedIn being like, do you want to join my community? Like, we're trying to build a better future. It's a 50-50 kind of hit rate in terms of people wanting to join. But then we were interested in collective intelligence, and it was like, hey, maybe we'll build this thing. And it was kind of just having fun. I don't know if we even thought about making money with those things, which is not the right thing to do. But then the current product we landed on was something that we actually needed ourselves and that we did pay someone else for. And because that experience was really bad, and I was really naive. I was like, why don't we just build this ourselves? And now I understand why it was more expensive, but very much focused on building stuff for us. Also, then you obviously understand the customer. And then the thing that I think I had to learn afterwards was not just stuff that I would use, but obviously like what would I actually pay for.
I think for us it was really the process of finding PMF feels like you're just throwing spaghettis at a wall and seeing what sticks. And I think it's about identifying what are the spaghettis that you're going to try and throw, because you don't have money to throw hundreds of spaghettis, you can only throw a few, and how quickly are you going to be able to then discard the spaghettis that have fallen on the floor and identify the ones that aren't sticking. And so for us it was to be able to do those 2 points, it was really about understanding what are the customer needs and speaking. We did user interviews every single week, still do them today. We're 4 years in. We do about 10 of them every single week. But then also understanding that customers have no idea what they want, and what they tell you is oftentimes not what they end up using. So really, really getting granular with product data. We work in 2-week sprints where every 2 weeks there's a new app that comes onto the App Store with something else that we've changed, and then just relentlessly tracking the data and seeing if it's going in the right direction. And then I think I was listening to a podcast once about the founder of the app that's called Calm, and they said, for us, there was one spaghetti that changed everything, which was the nighttime stories. When they introduced that, suddenly everything changed. And my sister and I were just sitting there like, we haven't found that spaghetti, we really want to find it. When is it going to come? We don't have endless money. And we actually ended up finding our spaghetti, which was introducing avocados inside the app, where when people are learning about finance, they're also gaining points. And with those points, they can exchange them against gifts and rewards that we get from partners. So we don't pay for the gifts and rewards, we get companies to pay for them. But now when the end user is learning about money, they're also getting paid to learn about money. And that has completely transformed retention. It's completely transformed how much people talk about the app, how long they stay on it, how much content they consume. And so it was just stumbling across this one spaghetti, essentially. And that was like the golden pot for us.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. All right, so this is my final question. So I'm very, very keen to open it up to the room for any types of questions. Chatham House rules, I probably should have said that at the very beginning, but it's an implied. But I think,
with what we're chatting about.
disclaimer. But I think you'll probably also notice that a lot of this conversation is focused on all of the founders' kind of early stages, like the early days of founding. But I think, like, my question is kind of looking back, reflecting back, is there anything that you would have done differently in the early stages of founding your company? Or like, what advice would you have given your past self?
I mean, we're still quite early. We're only 2.5 years in. But I would say time is like only speeding up and getting busier as we have more customers and, you know, have more investors, and I guess just like seeing the opportunity like get bigger and bigger. And I think I haven't and still don't take enough time to take a step back from everything. I'm so in the weeds of everything that sometimes I think you're making decisions like so quickly, actually like taking a step back to reflect, like, number one, how much we've accomplished in a month. It's like insane. But then also just to take a step back to think about like truly where are we going, and like, you know, what are we doing, like and just looking at things a bit more big picture, because really like the days just and the weeks just fly by. I don't know if you like all agree, and then you're just like, where is it going? So I think for me, making time more than just the sort of weekly call I have with Joe, just to reflect, make sure we're going on the right track and not just doing everything all at once with limited direction. And I think I need to be doing that really now, as well as 2.5 years ago. That's my advice, I think.
My advice to my younger self would be to get on the knowledge train faster and earlier. I often hired people to do things that I didn't understand. Like, I don't know about SEO, I'm gonna hire a marketing person, or I don't know about engineering, I need an engineer. And like, I said this earlier, but if you cannot describe AI to me right now, you need to get up an hour early tomorrow and you need to figure it out. You yourself have got to understand every single thing in your business. You need to understand how VCs work. You need to understand why they might want 10% instead of 5%. That's on you. You cannot rely on anyone else to give you the answers. Wisdom only comes from yourself. You can get lots of data points. I can tell you my experience, but it's only you. And you have to start that journey like now, because there's a lot to learn. That's my advice.
Kind of related to yours, one of the biggest mistakes I think we made, and again, I would still want to make the mistakes to learn from them, because I think there's only so much you can learn from reading a book and someone else's mistakes, right? Or rather, I seem to need to make all of my mistakes. When we hired the first couple of people, it was like, we ended up hiring 2 people who were kind of junior to mid-level, because we were like, well, it's better to have 2 people rather than 1 person. No, definitely don't do that. It's much better to, you hire someone because you ideally want less work. You can delegate it to them rather than now you've added more work because you need to then look at what they're doing, mentor them, hold them accountable, and then if they don't do a good job, you're fixing that stuff. So hiring senior people from the start is something that we didn't do at the beginning. And then related to what you're saying, definitely doing the role ourselves before hiring for that role, because everyone can give you advice. But saying, hey, we need to hire an engineer or a salesperson or a designer, there's so many different kinds of, whatever the role is that you're hiring for, that someone who might have been good at a big company or doing B2B SaaS might not remotely make sense for your business. And if you haven't done the role, it's very hard, I think, to have strong opinions on what you actually need. And also, one of the other things I found really useful was you do the role, you then, for a little while, and then you get to actually see what the really hard parts are, right? And that's really useful for building into the process. And now when we do challenge stages, we kind of set like something that's similar to the hardest thing that person would be doing.
Yeah, I resonate with what you said so much. I think the hiring piece is really important, but I won't reiterate on that. I think for us, one of the biggest mistakes that I feel we've done is trying to reinvent the wheel everywhere and apply a sort of first principles thinking to everything, when there are lots of solutions out there that work and we don't have to rethink everything. So if I look at some of our competitors that have grown quicker or that have had better retention, stuff like this, it's because they took something that works and just applied it to the world of finance. So if you think of creating a podcast about how to invest, my sister and I were like, oh, we're definitely not going to do that. It's so saturated, like podcasts, no one's going to want to listen to this. And now I'm seeing competitors that did a podcast as a growth channel, and they've grown so much quicker than we have. And there's so many other examples where that's the case, where we were just like, no, this is a solution that exists, we're not going to touch it. So I would sometimes say, like, yeah, if things work, you don't need to reinvent it. Just take it and apply it in your own industry. It doesn't have to all be novel and startup and exciting.
Awesome. All right, opening up to the floor for any questions. We've got 2 mics up here. My little helper is going to give out the mic. I think you're going out.
Me first, is it? Hi, Jazz. This question for you. This is Kate, and I'm Nikki from How Am I? We're also serving the same community as you. So young menstruators. So being the first, we're just at the beginning of our journey getting investment. So I wonder if you can speak to when you're looking at massive behavioural change in society and a market that doesn't exist almost.
Yeah.
How are you proving the case and the traction for that when you have to talk figures and you're starting to get investment in cap tables, etc.?
It's a really good question. And I think, when you are a category-defining product or industry, it's really hard. And I think 2 years ago when we first did our fundraise, it was perhaps harder than it is now because, it's only last week, there's politics around sex ed in schools, and now we're talking about digital smartphone bans and the online safety bill. And I feel like teens and tweens now are quite a hot topic, but 2 years ago, wasn't being spoken about as much, and we were in there like, we've got this data that's showing that they're going to TikTok, it's a problem. People are like, there's other problems to fix. And so I think trying to find investors that truly back your vision, perhaps they're parents, perhaps they're women, that might have experienced the same thing as your early adopters, and to get that first bit of capital is like what we had to pivot because no VCs were going to back us. Also, like no one knew. I'm just a little Deloitte consultant, like no track record. Why are you going to back me? So, I mean, it's still much harder now, like in year 2.5, but I feel like we've been able to prove to them we can build stuff. We've now got testimonials for teens. We've now got data showing we're improving mental health, reducing anxiety. We've got testimonials of people saying, I went to my doctor and changed my contraceptive pill because I've been logging that I've been getting headaches, close to my period. So we've got data points. But then expectations do get harder. You know, investors want more revenue, et cetera, et cetera. I think the milestones always change. So my advice to early, for you as an early organisation is maybe go to people you know who back your track record, go to people who back your mission and be really targeted in your approach for investors. But also with impact-driven companies, grants are also a really good source. They're really hard to get. We got successful with one small 20k private grant, never an Innovate UK one, but I would also encourage looking at alternatives as well, just until you get the momentum going. Hopefully that helps. But it's not easy, but then people will spot the great idea and come after it, I'm sure.
They've got another question over here.
Okay. I have a question for Alexia. So I love your honesty about building and what goes wrong. And you mentioned about the spaghetti, that was the thing that hooked everyone in, the points. So we have a fan-centric app and sports is our first niche. And within our gamification of the feed is to do with points and rewards and leaderboards. Mm-hmm. How did you find establishing those brand deals, so getting those rewards essentially for free?
Yeah. Thousands and thousands and thousands of emails, essentially. I think we've got a lucky niche, which is finance and women as an intersection, and it's not very saturated. So actually you can find players that have quite a bit of money, financial institutions, that want to go after female customers, and so they're happy to sponsor some rewards on our behalf. So for example, you'll receive Apple AirPods sponsored by Barclays or whatever, and they're giving us the money to buy the Apple AirPods. So something that I was going to say we didn't get the chance to is the industry that you're building in is so important. And I have so many friends that are getting to the end of their runway and they're in fashion, they're in so many different industries where they're, I don't know what to do with this startup, no one wants to buy it, there's no money in this. And we got so lucky, pure coincidence, that it was finance that we're building in. And all of these banks, all of these financial institutions, they are dying for more female customers. And so there's a way of accessing money that is just easier. So it's not necessarily answering your gamification question, but I think just in general for everyone, thinking about the industry that you're building in and potentially leaning on an industry that has a lot of money definitely makes it easier in the future to generate revenue.
Hi, this is a question for Lauren, but really for all of you. I love the fact that the boss that you went to said, "Oh, you need to get some big brands," and you just went and got them.
Yeah.
How?
So great question. So I did not have confidence before I started, but once I started, I was like, yeah, this needs to be out in the world. And you're either going to be an early adopter or you're going to be a late adopter, but you're going to do it. And I know I'm American, and so confidence in terms of presentation is kind of born in us. But truth be told, I found the targeted people that I wanted to speak to. I mean, like literally I wrote out, okay, you said Fortune 500, let's look at the 500. Okay, let me look at my LinkedIn. I'm in London. Who's in London? Okay, these companies are in London. Do I know anyone who works there? Okay, do I know anyone who works there? Yes, no. Does anyone in my college or my university, work there? And I just wrote to people, called on favors until I got in the room with someone. And I said, you know, the pitch to them. And I said, you need to use this from L'Oreal in London to L'Oreal in Paris. It's not the exact use case. So actually, I think it was Dimple earlier who was saying your messaging can be completely different with the exact same product, depending on who you're talking to. And I did that for each person. And I made a full demo for their company exactly how they would use it so that they could just copy paste. I think also it's important to remember that everybody's got a boss. Everybody has someone that they need to show off to. And so I wanted to make sure that if they used my product, it wasn't because it was a great product that made their work better, but because it made their reputation better. Because they could turn around and go, I found this cool thing I want to show my boss. And that's often more of a motivation, especially very early MVPs. I mean, B2B business is about as unsexy as it comes. It's not consumer. So you have to figure out what is it that is going to get someone to actually use it. And I have found oftentimes that it's reputation. Sorry, just one more thing to add on. Even when I did actually try and sell Shareback, I quickly realized that it was not the utility of the product, that actually there are partners whose sole job is to sell business and to get new clients. And actually there was a much more important need, which was to show off to their clients, hey, we've got a tool for you if you come and work with us. And that was actually much more important than it was to make a great product for the analysts and the people on the team. So really figuring out like what gets people going. It's often much more selfish than you might think. So that's how I did it.
I think we've got time for 5 minutes more questions, and then we're going to wrap up and hand it over to Jed for some closing remarks and then food and drinks. But just wanted to give you a heads up on that.
Hi, over here. Thank you so much. I'm at the back. Thank you all for being here. I've really, really enjoyed your honesty and just hearing the different stories. I'm 2.5 months into my solo founder experience, also ex-management consultant, Deloitte as well, Jazz. My question is, I think to all of you, is how do you manage your time when you're passionate about something to avoid burnout when it all falls on you and you've got a team and you're managing, trying to plan? You need to be present in what you're building today and looking at the insights you're getting, but also planning ahead and also managing so many different elements. Any tips and tricks on that would be super, super helpful. That's something that I'm currently navigating. And I think when it all falls on you and you're really passionate about something, it's really hard to, you make yourself believe that you're nocturnal or that you can do all these amazing things until you find yourself, on a Sunday or at a certain point where you think, I actually need to take a bit of time off. And there's a bit of guilt associated with that as well. So I guess it's a bit of a loaded question. But yeah, just in terms of time management when you're passionate about something.
I think for me, the biggest aha moment was when we let go of 5 people in the team at once. And I realized that I had to take on all of their workload. And after doing it for about a month, I was just like, one, why did I have 5 people doing this? I think I'm able to do it on my own. But also, what I've actually become really, really good at is relentless prioritization. So I am really only doing the 20% on my to-do list that's going to lead to the 80% result. Perfectionism does not exist. There is mistakes everywhere, but at least it gets done. And it's about finding, again, this idea of like identifying the spaghettis that are going to stick. It's about identifying those tasks that are going to move the needle the most. And so many times at the beginning, would I work incredibly hard and then take a break with my sister and feel like, what have we actually done last week? Like, how have we moved the product in the right direction? And the answer was kind of nebulous. And so now it's about just really, 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 really only doing what matters. And it's really hard to let go of 80% of the stuff, but just finding the stuff that's going to matter. And yeah, accepting that a lot of it is never going to get done. Yeah.
Or you might just not have gas in the tank, which is also just a real thing. My co-founder, Yev, who you now all know about, who is an angel, he's Ukrainian. And we had just raised £6 million when the war kicked off. And he just couldn't do it. He just could not do it, obviously. And sometimes there are big things in life. I think especially people say the startup journey can take a decade. You're going to go through some big life moments. And there's going to be some big life moments where you just don't care about B2B software. and that's fair. And so if you are experiencing burnout, maybe check in with yourself and maybe say, I can do this in 6 months. As someone who waited 3 years to launch this idea, I promise you there's always time. You can always wait. Your health is more important.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, I've been through a hell of a journey alongside this, and I think it is a long journey. And for me, I found like the first year I was able to go like 6 months without a break, and then like it started to get a lot shorter, where it's like every month I really need to take like a flat weekend where I'm just like off. I do work 6 days a week, but that Sunday for me is like my day for me and my husband, and that's it. But that is my choice to work 6 days a week. The Saturday I get the most work done because I don't have my team members like, hey Jazz, like, can you check this? Can you check this? So what I think it's just what works for every individual. Like I allocate my time to work out. For me, 4 times a week is like good enough. That's the only time I'm just trying to struggle through my fitness class. So I just really don't think there's like a one size fits all. I think being purposeful with the breaks. I also work quite clearly to milestones, so I'm like at the tail end of a round. I know like when that closes, I'm 100% taking like 7 days, 10 days off, and I'm properly switching off. So that was a bit of a ramble, but just I think figure out what works best for you. Be stingy with your time. Like your time is so precious, but to what you said, it's a long game. Like life goes up and down, and at times where you need to take a break, like the business can wait, and hopefully you'll have a good enough team that can pick up the pieces for you between that.
Yeah, I think if you have, it might not be an option for you if you're 2.5 months in. I don't know if you've still got a job or if there's money to hire anyone, but for me, I find it really hard to do stuff I don't want to do, and I like get quite depressed. It's really bad for my mental health. I have ADHD. I know some people are like, oh, this doesn't exist, but I get very, very depressed, and I'm not functioning that well, and so it's kind of, I'm very lucky as well to have a co-founder who's very understanding of the stuff, and if he can tell that I'm kind of getting, my mood isn't that great, he's very like, hey, the most important thing for the business is we're on good form, right? So he'll tell me to switch off. But anyway, yeah, for me, it's if I'm spending more than, let's say, 70% of my time on things that don't give me energy, that's not a good use of my time anyway. So it kind of aligns in terms of you don't want to be spending all of that time on stuff that you're maybe not. For me, it's also the stuff that I'm not good at, right? That doesn't give me energy. So just somehow trying to figure out a way where, because we also had a similar thing where we let go of a few members of the team. I took on the stuff. I wasn't good at it. Didn't give me energy. But it was very much like I need to work out a way to make sure that this isn't a long-term thing. And having that in mind for it, it's like, this is a max 6-month thing, and I'm working this whole time on figuring out how to remove that from my daily life is really important for me.
Time for one more question. Who shall it be?
First of all, thank you guys for your candor. Like, it's really appreciated, especially because we're all kind of going through this journey as well. So my question is more for Alexia and Jazz. So when you're running a business that's direct to consumer, and you also want to raise from VCs, and you also have like a target segment that VCs might not be interested in. So maybe for you, Jazz, like they didn't understand like the teenager women's health market. How did you raise money? Because like, for example, to give you context, my business, I started building in my MBA. I'm still in my MBA now. In the last year, we have hundreds of users. Our target demographic is university students. And VCs are like, yeah, they don't have a willingness to pay. You have to find a different business model. So how did you raise money? Were you generating revenue when you raised money? And then angels, even, it feels like now, and maybe it's a different market since the last 2 to 4 years, but angels are even saying, okay, you need to prove some willingness to pay. You have to generate some like thousands of dollars in revenue for us to be interested. And maybe it's just a shift in market dynamics, but that's just the feedback we've been getting constantly when we talk to investors.
Definitely. Yeah, I do think there has been a shift in market dynamics, but I think VC isn't the only option. And this is where, thank you for Odin, because basically Odin is like a platform where you can collect £1,000 tickets from people in your network or people who believe in the idea. And so we have some VC funding from Octopus Ventures and EQT, their first check funds. But actually, when we were hearing feedback, well, show me willingness to pay, I was like, okay, how much cash do we need to get to show that we've got revenue? And we pivoted. We were like, okay, if we can't get big VCs to do it, why string out these conversations? Let's go to the mums. Let's go to the female CEOs who are like, actually, I want to back the next generation of women. And this tail end of my round is with Odin, I'm getting 100 women to put £1,000 in to Luna so they can advocate to their kids' schools across their organisation. So what I would say is if you're not getting any luck with VCs, it is hard out there. Even the best organisations are struggling, but there are other options. There's even like crowdfunding, and I was like, oh, I don't want to ask people for money. It gives me the ick. Like, it's just, in my culture, it's just not a thing. But you would be surprised who's like hiding a 2 or 3K under their pillow. Because like my friends that I've known, I was like, oh, I thought you can go for dinner the other day. Oh, but here's £2,000. So honestly, don't lose hope. If it's not working, pivot. And seriously, Odin, incredible platform. I don't know how many of, I think you've used it.
Yeah, we've all used it.
Yeah, there we are. Sorry, I have no affiliation. I take no commission. I don't know what you would say, Alexia. And to be honest, like we learned a lot from you. You were so open with you when we started Luna. But yeah, I don't know if you'd add anything to that.
I think we raised at the moment where it was the easiest to raise, and we raised in the financial sector. So there is a lot of money to be made there. So I never really encountered the question of like, can you show us revenue before we give you money? It was more, I don't know, maybe we just got lucky. It was more, the questions that we got were opportunity based. It was about how big can this get? Like what are you imagining in the future? Are you going to create an investment platform? Are you going to do this? Oh, you can do all of these other things. So it was very positive. So I haven't actually encountered this, and I'd be lying if I said, that I have any solutions to it. Sorry.
Awesome. That is it, guys. Give it up for all the panelists. Before we head to drinks and nibbles, would like to invite Jed Rose up just to say some closing remarks. But again, thank you so much for the discussion. Absolutely loved it. Really, really cool insights. So Jed, over to you.
Thank you. Do you guys want to stay on, or? Hello. Look, guys, the title slide of this at the very beginning was empowering female founders to build venture capital-backed businesses. I hope you found this afternoon really helpful. I hear a lot of yeses, which is great. So on behalf of the whole Antler team, thank you so much for coming out. Thanks to our panelists and our speakers. Give it a round of applause for everyone. And then a special shout out and applause for Sarah Finnegan, who organized and planned this whole afternoon. As she said, this is our largest female founder event that we've ever done globally, and that's across 6 continents. That's not like a light thing to say, so really proud. I guess just some final thoughts to wrap it up here. At Antler, we talk about kind of 3 big things we're looking for startups that we back: venture capital fit, founder fit, and traction. On VC fit, I love the spaghetti analogy. I might use that. Really cool, right? You can actually see the noodles like flying at the wall. For venture capital fit, anyone can register a company. What is it, 35 pounds? Anyone can get a customer. Anyone can get revenue. It's not to say that's not an accomplishment to get that, but that's just like a one step along the way. And I think you got a real good picture of the journey that these founders have been on. And so for venture capital fit, it's building conviction that you're building in a great market, that you have a real opportunity for an impact, and that this team, will be able to deliver and do that. And so venture capital fit's a tough thing. We covered that on product market fit. That was the session earlier. So I hope you got some key insights, and along with the panel here, about what to look for that. If it doesn't have VC fit, you're probably not using the best of your experience and talents and passion to make a real big impact. Second thing was founder fit. Are you the right team, right? And so we covered this a lot on the panel. You heard some great co-founder stories, but what is your background? What is your experience? What is your insight? Who is your co-founder? Who's your CTO? How is it this team the right team right now to go after this problem and solve it? It's not an easy question to answer. Really tough, but super important. And I think you got kind of the clear story of how co-founders make a big impact with making progress. Third thing was traction. We talked about go-to-market, making an impact, validating with customers. You heard some great stories here in the panel as well with that the grit and the struggle to get your first customers, first revenue. Really inspiring. Everyone goes through this. I was thinking there's 4 founders here on the panel. There's about 200 of you. It's literally there's 50 other stories for each person that's sitting on the chair here. So traction is super important and being able to get that. And I guess to kind of wrap it all up, if you find yourself struggling on founder fit, VC fit, or traction, Antler's a partner, and obviously we're here to help and support on that. And then lastly, just worth saying on behalf of the team, obviously we care a lot about this. We want to see more women founders. We think there's a lot of brilliant people out there we want to back, regardless of background and diversity. And so we think a rising tide lifts all ships, right? And so I think that's kind of the big part of why we do these events, is to help you guys connect and to help build the ecosystem. And on that note, we're now shifting to networking. So I hope you guys enjoyed the sessions, and please keep continuing here with the discussion for the next hour.